Hello everyone. So today we'll study about cardiac cycle. Before starting into cardiac cycle, I'll just give a brief overview on the structure of the heart. So basically, mammalian heart consists of four chambers. The upper two chambers are known as atrium or auricles, and the lower chambers are known as ventricles. Okay, so there are both right atrium and left atrium, and right ventricle and left ventricle. Now this superior vena cava, what it does, this superior vena cava takes all the deoxygenated blood from the lower part of the body. Okay, lower part of the body. Now, okay. Now, what does the superior vena cava do? The superior vena cava mainly function is to take the deoxygenated blood from the upper part of the body. Then coming to the pulmonary artery. So basically here this pulmonary artery and the pulmonary veins are the exception. Okay, basically this what the function of artery? Artery generally carries the oxygenated blood. Okay, and veins generally carry the deoxygenated blood. But here the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, and the pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Now, this aorta gives the oxygenated blood, pumps the oxygenated blood from the heart to the rest part of the body. Okay. Now, this was the overview. Yeah, and the connection between the right atrium and left right ventricle is this through tricuspid valve, and the left atrium and left ventricle is connected through this mitral valve. Now, this was the overview of cardiac cycle. Now coming to cardiac structure or the structure of the mammalian heart. Now coming to cardiac cycle. So what basically is cardiac cycle? So cardiac cycle means all the events that is occurring from one heartbeat to the second heartbeat to another heartbeat. Okay, that is known as cardiac cycle. So there are certain kind of events, okay, number of events which are occurring between one heartbeat to another heartbeat. This entire events is all of the events which comprises together is known as cardiac cycle, as it go in a repetitive manner. Okay, that these all events are occurring continuously with the continuous heartbeat one by one. So that's why it is known as cycle. Okay. Now, you guys must have seen when you start cycling or you start a motorbike, you need some kind of ignition or some kind of force to start any kind of thing. Similarly, in heart, heart also needs some kind of stimulus. Okay, to to pump or to the heartbeat to occur. So now this stimulus is generated by a special load that is known as SA node or sinoarterial load. Okay. Now this sinoarterial load provides an action potential. Okay. This action potential is produced spontaneously. Okay. Without any stoppage, it is produced spontaneously in the each cycle. Okay, now this SA node acts as a natural pacemaker of the heart. Okay, so this provides the that stimulus or that ignition to the heart so that the heart can pump the blood or pass the blood to the lungs, or from the lungs from the heart to the rest part of the body. Now this sino-arterial load is present in the right side of the atrium, present in the right atrium wall here. Okay, now this provides the signal, the action potential to the ventricles through various other structures, which includes bundle of His and and Purkinje fiber. So basically what happened, this sinoatrial node gives the signal to the AV node, to the AV node. Then from the AV node, it goes to the sorry, bundle of His. Then it goes to the Purkinje fiber. Purkinje fiber. Now, this is how the conduction occurs. Then, from the Purkinje fiber, it goes to the right ventricle, and the conduction occurs. Okay. Now, the cardiac cycle generally consists of two processes, that is known as diastole and systole. So, when the cardiac cycle is in a relaxed position or in a relaxation period, then it is known as diastole. When the heart is in contraction phase, that is known as systole. Okay. Next, coming to the stages of cardiac cycle. Now, basically, the stages of cardiac cycle includes three main steps, which are atrial systole, ventricular systole, and isovolumetric relaxation, or otherwise known as joint diastole. Yeah. Otherwise known as joint diastole. Okay. Then coming to arterial systole. Okay. So what happens now? This arterial systole means what? In this phase, the atria or the auricles are contracted. Okay. Now this contraction mainly takes place 0.1 second to occur. Okay. Now what happened? First, the depolarization occurs. Okay. Remember, we read in the previous slide about the sinoatrial node. Okay. So now basically what happened? This sinoatrial node, gives the action potential to the auricle. Okay. Now this auricle depolarization occur. Once the depolarization occur, this contract. Now, once these auricles are contracting, okay, what will happen? The pressure over here will increase. Okay, why it will increase? Because the volume is reduced. When it's contracted, okay, when it's squeezed, then the volume decreases, and when the volume decreases, eventually the pressure increases. Okay. Now, when the pressure increases in this region, okay, what happened? This pressure forces the atrioventricular valves to open. Okay, when the uh, when here also, when the auricles, the pressure increases in auricles, these valves, atrioventricular valves, this open up. When this open up, what happens? As we know, the nature of fluid, it basically runs from higher pressure zone to lower pressure zone to maintain a equilibrium state. Okay. So now what will happen? This fluid or the blood from the higher pressure zone, which is auricle, will gush into the ventricle. Okay. Because here the pressure is comparatively lower, and the volume is higher. Okay. Once the blood flows from the auricle to the ventricle, now what happened? In this auricular systole phase, which occurs for 0.1 second, here, while these auricles are contracted, the ventricles are in a relaxed state or diastole state. Okay, here there is no contraction in the ventricles. Okay, now Then comes the ventricular systole. Okay. So now what happened in the ventricular systole? What will happen? This occurs. This process takes 0.3 seconds. Okay. Now here what happens? The once the blood from auricle enters into ventricle. Now what happened? This ventricle gets the action potential. Once this ventricle gets the action potential, now it is depolarized and the contraction occurs in the ventricle. Okay, once the contraction is occurring in the ventricle, again the pressure increases as the volume is decreasing. So this increase in pressure allows this valve, this auricular ventricular valve to close. Okay, once this is closed, then eventually the blood will be transferred to the arteries. Okay, let it be pulmonary vein or pulmonary artery. Okay, now why is this valve closed? Basically the valves are present. The main function of the valve is to reject or not allow the backflow of the blood. See, once if these are open, when the contraction is occurring in the ventricle, then there are chances this blood can go back to the auricle. Then if it is again going back to the auricle, then there is no point, because half of the blood will go to auricle. Then what will go to the lungs for the oxygenation purpose? That's why these valve are present. So basically the function of the AV valve is to prevent the backflow of the blood in both the cases. Okay, right side or the left side. Okay, now this pressure helps the valve to close. Okay, now again, when here the pressure decreases in the arteries, say pulmonary artery or pulmonary vein, what happened here? Sorry, means aorta, not pulmonary vein, aorta. So what happens now in this artery? The pressure is higher than the ventricles. Okay, so what will happen? The fluid will again gush into the arteries, okay, due to change in pressure. Now the again the semilunar valve will also close, so that it will not come back to the ventricle. Once it is out of the ventricle, it means it is out. It cannot come back. To prevent this backflow, the semilunar valve is closed. Okay, now coming to the maximum ejection phase. Now okay, in this ventricular systole, now the auricles are relaxed. Okay, earlier what happened? The auricle were contracted and ventricles were relaxed. Now when the ventricle are relaxed, then the ventricle are contracted, then now this auricle are relaxed. So auricular diastole period is also 0.3 second, because in this period auricles are relaxed. Okay, now coming to maximum ejection phase, more increase in inter ventricular pressure, okay, give rise to the flow of the blood from the ventricle to the arteries. Okay, so basically in right ventricle, 25 mm of Sg. Okay, this pressure give rise the closure of the pulmonary valve, and opening of the pulmonary valve, and the blood gushes to the pulmonary artery. Okay, yeah, and in left ventricle, 120 mm of Sg is required to open the aortic valve, and then the blood goes to aorta. Okay, once the blood is gone, then this valve automatically closes to prevent the backflow. Now coming to isovolumetric relaxation. Okay, isovolumetric relaxation, otherwise known as joint diastole or joint relaxation phase. Now, why is it known as joint diastole or joint relaxation phase? Because in this phase, both the auricle and ventricles are relaxed. Okay. Now, this entire relaxation phase lasts for 0.4 seconds. Okay. Now, what happened as the intraventricular pressure is higher, then the blood flows to artery, which we read, and the valves are closed. The semilunar valve over here, and the aortic valve, and the aortic valve also over here, aortic valve, this both closes. Okay. Now, once these are closed, once the blood is gone from the ventricles, then what happened? The ventricle is also relaxed, the auricle is also relaxed. This lasts for 0.4 seconds. Now, when both of them are relaxed, that's why it is known as joint diastole or relaxation phase. Okay. Now, what happened? The intra-auricular pressure and ventricular pressure is maintained, and AV valves are also closed. Okay. It doesn't open. When the pressure in the auricle is decreased, then only the valves will open. Okay, that's why it is known as joint diastole. Now, okay, now the entire cycle lasts for 0.8 second. Okay, so from one heartbeat to another heartbeat, the time period is 0.8 second. Okay, 0.8 second. Okay, now how 0.8 second? So we read the prior one, 0.1 second for the auricular systole, then the ventricular systole consists of zero point 0.3, and then now the joint diastole occurs for 0.4. Okay, so total is 0.8. So, so this entire event, what is occurring, from the entry of the blood to the exit of the blood from the heart, and then again the entry of the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, and then again from the lungs to the rest, from the heart to the rest part of the body. This entire everything occurs in 0.8 second. Okay, this the time period from one heartbeat to another heartbeat is 0.8 seconds. Okay. Then coming to cardiac sound. Okay, the first sound of the heart is called love. Okay, how this sound occurs, means why this sound occurs, from where this sound comes. So basically, this sound comes when there is closure of the AV valve. Okay, we read the atrioventricular valve closes once the blood flows from auricle to the ventricle. So from the auricle, the blood gets transferred to the ventricle. Once it is transferred to the ventricle, then this valve which is present between the auricle and ventricle, this closes. Why? To prevent the backflow. Okay, so that the blood cannot go back to the auricle. Okay, so to prevent the backflow, when this closure of atrioventricular valves takes place, when it is once the blood is transferred, then while these are closing, okay, this closure makes the sound lub. Okay, the sound is very low pitched and relatively longer. The lub sound is kind of longer. Okay, and it's very low pitch. Now, the second sound of the heartbeat is dub. So basically, the simultaneously make the sound lub dub lub dub lub dub. Okay, now, the second sound, dub, from where it comes, when the closure of semilunar valve. Okay, once the blood is transferred from ventricle to the arteries, then after the transfer of the blood to the arteries, then the semilunar valve, which is connecting the ventricles and the artery, that closes to prevent the black flow of the blood to the ventricles. Okay, during the closure of these particular valve, this dub sound is generated. Generally what happens, this dub sound is high pitched and short and sharp. Okay, so what is the difference between lub and dub? For major differences, first is it is the closure of AV valve, and the second is the closure of the semilunar valve. And the second difference is love is very low pitch and soft and relatively longer, whereas the dub sound is high pitched, shorter and sharp. It's like lub dub, lub dub. Okay, so these basically forms the heartbeat or the heart sound. That beat which is lub dub sound. So basically, the main reason is the AV valve and the semilunar valve. Okay. Then coming to the conduction, okay, which I explained, somewhat I explained earlier in the slide. So sinoarterial node, this sinoarterial node which is present in the right auricle, produce electrically unstable signals. Okay, now this electrical unstable signals helps to produce impulses. Okay, now this is also known as the natural pacemaker of the heart, which I earlier mentioned. Now this impulses, it gives impulse to the atria. This impulse results in the depolarization. This depolarization occurs to systole or the contraction of the artery, auricles or atrium. Okay, now this contraction occurs due to the depolarization. Okay, then atrioventricular nodes present near the AV valve. Here is the atrioventricular valves. Okay, here atrioventricular valves. Here only atrioventricular nodes are present. Okay, this one. Okay, here only atrio. This one, atrioventricular nodes are present. Okay, this transmits signal from the atria to the ventricle. Okay, that now ventricle needs to contract or ventricle needs to come into systole phase. Okay, then this AV valves are also AV nodes are also known as the secondary pacemaker. The primary pacemaker is sinoatrial node, because this particular reason is only generating the signal. The second pacemaker, the secondary pacemaker, is the atrioventricular node. Why? Because it is transferring the signal. Okay, then the impulses are passed to the bundle of His. Okay, now once this bundle of His gains the impulses, it passes again it to the Purkinje fiber. Now this Purkinje fiber results in the contraction or systole of the ventricle. Okay, the contraction or systole of the ventricle is because of the impulses that is given by this Purkinje fiber, which is coming via bundle of His from the AV nodes. Okay, now this give result to the contraction of the ventricles, and then the blood can go to the artery. Then coming to the regulation of heartbeat, how is this heartbeat controlled? So basically, first one is autorhythmicity, that is from SA node. Means autorhythmicity means heart has its own rhythmicity; it can produce its own action potential. Okay, so through it has its own natural pacemaker, that is sinoatrial node. Then coming to the nervous system, nervous control have it includes sympathetic and parasympathetic, and endocrine control includes epinephrine and non-epinephrine control. The sympathetic nervous system occurs when there is vigorous amount of exercise. So this is basically involved in the increase of the heartbeat. And parasympathetic, it occurs during the relaxed phase or while sleeping or while resting. So basically, this reduces or brings back to the normal heartbeat. Okay, now epinephrine and non-epinephrine. So basically epinephrine involves the adrenaline hormone and epinephrine involves non-adrenaline hormone. Okay, now epinephrine involves when there is high emotions, the heartbeat becomes fast, and in non-epinephrine control, what happens, the heartbeat is controlled and comes back to the normal position. Then coming to the cardiac output, so the what is basically heart rate? Heart rate is the heartbeat per minute. Okay, so one heartbeat is 0.8 seconds. So in per minute, how much the heart is beating? That is basically the heart rate. Now, what is stroke volume? The volume of blood pumped out of the heart. Okay, that is approximately, you can say, 70 to 75 ml. Now, what is the overall cardiac output? Cardiac output is the stroke volume multiplied by the heart rate. Okay, so this is the stroke volume. Okay, the stroke volume multiplied by the heartbeat or heart rate, that is 72 per minute, which the overall will gives 5040 ml per minute, that is 5 liter per minute. The cardiac output is 5 liter per minute. Now, mainly coming to the conclusion, so damage to ventricles can lead to heart failure. Any kind of damage can eventually give rise to heart failure. Inadequate pumping of the blood can give rise to heart failure, as well as heart may beat either too fast or too slow. When there is, a problem with any a part of ventricle or auricle, basically ventricle. Okay, why? Because ventricle is responsible to send the blood to the various part of the body, oxygenated blood. Now that's why once there is issue with the ventricle, okay, then it can give rise to the heart failure. That is from my side. Thank you.